Your baby's mind is growing even before they arrive. The more you talk and sing and play, the more their mind will thrive. You gotta talk with your baby, play with your baby, read to your baby, make out you're a lion. Talk with your baby, play with your baby, read to your baby. Your words will grow their mind.
This season, we are recording on Ghana land at Podbooth Studio each and every episode, and we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging.
Your words will grow their mind.
Well, hello and welcome to Words Grow Minds, a podcast dedicated to supporting early childhood development. I'm Kate Ellis. I am a mum to two, a stepmum to two. Throw in a couple of cavoodles and it makes for a pretty hectic household.
And I'm Amelia. I'm mum to Ted and to Grace. I'm a journalist. And you know what? Normally I come in here bringing it a chaos anecdote, but today, easy drop off. Oh. So we're just going to touch some wood and hope that maybe the next one I say the same thing. Unlikely.
Maybe the chaos will unfold in the next half an hour.
Oh, no,
Stay
don't
tuned.
say that. Don't say that. We do have a very big episode though, Kate, today, don't we?
We do. Well, normally on this pod, we talk about brain science, we talk about early childhood development. Today is a little bit different, but we're talking about something that can impact on all of those and in all of the family structures, and that is perinatal anxiety and depression. I mean, we've all heard of the baby blues. Some have experienced it. But we're going to talk about what goes beyond the effects of hormonal shifts and sleep deprivation and when should we seek help.
So joining us to cover off this topic is Gia Hogarth. Now, Gia is a mum of 3 boys and co-host of another pod. We lift all pods up here, Mum Mind Unpacked. It explores the realities of motherhood and maternal mental health. Now, with a background as a TV news reporter, Gia is now retraining as a counsellor. She's driven by a deep passion for supporting women throughout the challenges of motherhood, and she also volunteers with Panda, advocating for greater awareness and support around perinatal anxiety and depression. Through her work, Gia is committed to having honest conversations, breaking stigma and helping mums feel less alone, which is incredibly important. Gia, welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Gia, so thank you so much for being with us and welcome to Words Grow Minds. Perhaps to get straight into it, maybe we'd love to hear a little bit about your story. We've just heard about that's quite a big transition, the TV news to training in counselling and helping others experiencing similar things. Tell us a little bit about what led you here.
Yeah, sure. So it has been a bit of a wild ride. I think, so my background, as you mentioned, was a TV news reporter. I was a police reporter for a number of years and it was a real fast-paced action job. I absolutely loved it. But a lot of the time I was hearing people's stories. Quite often it was the darkest days of their lives, whether it be after a car crash or a murder or something quite horrible. So I kind of felt in a way that I was acting as a bit of a counsellor anyway in those moments. I might have only been in their living room for an hour or a couple of hours and have to tell their story that night on the news. So it felt like quite an important role at the time. But I really, I guess after that, once I had kids, my mindset, everything changed and my priorities changed and I really wanted to be able to do a little bit more than that. And so, yes, I'm working to become a counsellor and, hosting the pod, which hopefully is helping, a lot of mums feel a little bit less alone and a bit more seen.
You've got some great episodes and you cover wide topics. I'm really interested though in your personal story. Gia and I were out on the road together at times and Gia's a big empath, hardest worker, super easygoing though. You'd see Gia and nothing would be too hard. It'd always be like, hey, how you going? And no matter the story you'd be covering, you've got so much warmth and such a high achiever. But when you became a mother, things changed a bit for you, didn't it?
Massively. So I was actually fine in my pregnancy. Everything was all good. I read all the baby books. I'd been to all the classes. I think being that high achieving journalist, I just wanted to make sure that I was as prepped as possible. And I really, to be honest, naively thought that I would just absolutely nail being a mum. I thought, what could be harder than the job I already have? Like I'm already waking up at crazy hours sometimes to go out on jobs. I'm a shift worker. I'm used to no sleep. Like surely I'll be fine. I'll be on mat leave. I'll be able to go and have a coffee. I'll be able to catch up with friends. And like, yeah, I'd always wanted to be a mum. Like that was my number one, I guess, goal in life, was to settle down and have kids, really, as much as I love my job. But when it actually came to having kids, it was almost like it hit me instantly. So pregnancy, no worries. But as soon as my eldest was born, he's now 8, it was almost like an out-of-body experience. So I had what I would describe as a traumatic birth, even though my obstetrician says it was textbook. I'm like, well, I don't know what part of that horrible experience was textbook to you. But for me, it wasn't what I was expecting. It was much longer than I thought. I was exhausted, as labours are. Anyway, so he comes out, they put this baby on my chest, and I didn't feel that instant connection that I thought I was going to feel. I remember waiting for this like endorphins rush that a lot of my friends had described, and that never came. I was just like shell-shocked, like really, I can picture it now, almost like looking down on myself thinking like, who am I? It was just a bizarre thing, and I just felt really helpless, and just for the first time in my life I felt really out of control. And then, the first few days in hospital, I was very teary and really anxious and, trying to breastfeed again, which is the most unnatural thing in the world, I found. I persisted with it or whatever, but I was like, I'm not good at this. Like, what's wrong with me? I'm really just, I thought this was going to go to plan, and it just, nothing was what I thought it would be. So that anxiety really hit me hard to begin with. And then that, continued. So I remember even leaving the hospital and bawling my eyes out as I walked out the door, because I thought, the midwives weren't going to be, on that call buzzer in the middle of the night. So I'm like, what am I going to do? And fortunately, I actually had amazing support. My mum was fantastic. She was, just amazing, around the clock support, really. But even still, I still just struggled. Those next few months were really, really hard. Every time my mum would go home, my husband had a couple of weeks off work or whatever it is, didn't have much leave. And there I was at home, with the baby. And I remember my panic would really set in when mum would go home in the afternoon. It was getting dark, and I would it's almost like impending doom would come over me. Like, what's the night going to bring? How am I going to cope? And then I had some really bad intrusive thoughts. And I just didn't feel myself. And I felt really just no control. Friends would come over to see how I'm going. And I tried to put on a brave face, but I would still just cry when they burst in. I'd burst into tears when they opened the door. But I feel like no one really picked up on how much I was struggling. And I still kind of had the mentality like, okay, like, everyone says you get the baby blues. It's a phase. Like, I'll be all right. But it definitely wasn't a few days. It was, probably 6 months and feeling like that. But I didn't actually get help. Like, I didn't actually actively seek, support from a counsellor or whatever. Back then I didn't even know Panda existed. So I think times have changed, thankfully. This was, 8.5 years ago now. But I was missed on the screening check that the GP does, or
So they did the screening check?
They did the screening check, yeah. I remember CAFS, so the Child and Family Health nurse came over, but I remember it was a bit of a delay. It was a couple of weeks after she was meant to come. Anyway, it just so happened that on the day that she arrived, I was having an okay day. It wasn't a particularly bad day. So on the scale of 1 to 5, how are you feeling? I was like, well, I actually joked with her as well. I was like, had you come yesterday, I would have ticked like 0 for everything. Yeah. But I'm actually feeling all right today. So, nothing against the nurse at the time, but maybe in hindsight, had she said, well, you know what, tick the worst boxes so that we can, if you need help, you'll be on the radar. But I was like, I don't know, I'm feeling like a 4 out of 5 today. So I did that for most, and I just didn't meet that threshold. It does come down to the numbers in that box at the end of the day of whether or not they refer you on to someone. So I feel like that was a missed opportunity for me to be picked up. And even when I saw GPs subsequently for other things, they just, it wasn't really picked up, even though I was teary a lot of the time. And I just kind of felt that maybe everyone was feeling like that, and maybe that was just normal, and I just needed to suck it up and it'll be right,
But is that because, we have normalised the baby blues. We talk about, that's something that everyone goes through.
Yes.
We've normalised, you're going to be sleep deprived, and just learn to cope without sleep somehow or another for the first year. We've kind of normalised a whole range of things. And I guess the question is, for people that are listening, Well, at what point do you say, oh, this is normal, this is something everyone goes through, and at what point do you kind of say, hang on, maybe we need to dig into this and a little bit deeper?
So in your journey, when did that point come? Because I can imagine it would have been incredibly hard to talk about. And I don't know why as women we can be like this, but when people come around, you actually don't want to be like, actually I spent all day yesterday unshowered and I did that. I haven't washed my hair in 2 weeks. Like, you don't want to talk about that. How it must have been hard for you to talk about it.
And I think what made it even harder was the fact that, my best friend, I had a couple of really close friends at the time also having babies, and they seemed to be coping really well. And as close as I was to them, I couldn't quite bring myself to say, like, I'm really not enjoying this. Like, I'm actually really struggling. So that was really hard, because I remember one saying, are you still in the love bubble? Like, oh, you're soaking up those cuddles. And I was like, love bubble? Like, this is a bubble of hell. Like, I'm hating life right now. This is not good. But I didn't even really confide in my partner much, because I didn't want to burden him, because, he was still working. And so I get up and do all the night time feeds and the night everything. And I just, pushed on through. And I think, even my mum, I didn't, as close as I am to her, I didn't really let on to her how bad it was. Maybe because, like people did always say, you were going to get the baby blues. And we do have this, vision in our mind that mum just gets on with it and copes no matter what. So I think, looking back, I definitely should have asked for help sooner. I think if you're having, these any sort of dark thoughts, or you're really feeling, anxious for no reason, you're not enjoying the things you used to do, you're struggling to sleep and it's not because of the baby, you got your own racing thoughts, then if that lasts more than a couple of days, then, you're in every right to ask for help. And I think the sooner you can get some professional help, the better. No one's going to turn you away, even if it is just a chat with your GP or calling somewhere like Panda. It's amazing what just a phone call could do. I didn't do it, and I wish I had. But just to feel validated and to know that you're not the only one experiencing that, and that all of these conditions are very treatable if you get the right support.
So, at what point in your journey did that moment come where you're like, something needs to change here?
Yeah, well, I had my first two quite close together. So 3 boys. I've got 8, 7 and 4.
And we wish you all the best with that.
I really need all the help I can get. So having the first 2 boys 18 months apart, I thought, I'll just bang them out. It'll be great. They'll be best mates for life, and, I'll just get on with it. No, that I wouldn't advise myself doing that again. The 18-month age gap really, really I struggled with. So it wasn't until my second came along that I decided to get some help, and I actually got a referral from a GP, got a mental health care plan, and then have seen a perinatal psychologist, which has been game-changing for me. And I actually still see her 8.5 years on, and I will continue to see her for as long as I possibly can, because it's just so, so helpful. So I highly encourage anybody to just reach out as soon as you can. And if finances are an issue, then, of course, even a counsellor or telehealth, or there's always something you can do to not wait like I did.
Can I just ask about, from your experience, about warning signs? Because as we so often do on this pod, we had a really good conversation before we started recording, and but we were just talking about, I was telling the story about someone I know who wanted to be a mother more desperately than anything else in the world, became a mother and had crippling perinatal anxiety and depression. And so it wasn't because it was something that she didn't want. It wasn't because of the change, but is this clearly, are there warnings around, you spoke earlier about being high achievers, being perfectionists, and as much as we like to think of ourselves as modern women, I think there still is this thing that you're just meant to be able to naturally know how to be a mum. And if you don't nail it right away, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. What do you think? Are there warning signs, or does this just happen in different ways to different people?
I think it can happen to anybody, and the symptoms for everyone are all, the signs I should say, are all very different, case by case basis. But I think, having a mental health condition before you go into pregnancy, bit of a red flag there. You're going to be more likely to to struggle. Having low access to support. So if you don't have that family network or friends or, the village we talk about, which most people don't have these days. That can play a factor. I think big life stresses, so whether that be finances or, like you said, fertility struggles or, relationship problems. And yes, having that perfectionistic sort of trait, I think anecdotally, a lot of people that I've spoken to have really struggled with that because you have such high expectations of what you think motherhood would be, and then you go in and you feel like a failure. So it's that constant feeling of you're not good enough and you're doing it wrong, and then there's the shame that comes with that, and not feeling like you're sort of eligible to get help because you're not bad enough or something. So yeah, but it can strike anyone, and I know a number of cases where a mother has had multiple children, but it hasn't been until her third that she's had any issues. So you just got to be on the lookout, and I think get help as soon as you don't feel right.
Do you think there's a social media risk here too? You're seeing perfect homes, mums with kids, and it's just joy, and it's photographed nicely, and it's at a time in your life where you do have a bit more time to scroll. And is there, do you think, or the feedback
Absolutely.
you might get is that plays a role too?
Absolutely. I think so often, you'll be feeding your baby at night and just having a scroll and seeing all these seemingly perfect families, their newborn photo shoots and everyone looks perfect and #blessed. I remember even looking back at my own photo shoot that we had, and I still can see like the fear in my eyes. No one else would have picked it up. I'm smiling, but behind that smile, I was struggling, and I had just been crying before the photographer came, like panicky. It was winter. So I was like, I don't want to do anything outside because my baby, he could get pneumonia and he could die. So like the spiraling, catastrophizing, that was definitely my thought pattern for a number of months. And it's not good. And yeah, seeing that constantly comparing to other people online is horrible. But in the same breath, I think there's so much good on social media as well in terms of now, so much more information available than what I had back then. Access to podcasts, things that you can listen to and actually feel.
And there are
like
some
you're not the only
cool
one.
accounts out there too, which are now very real, and are all about showcasing the messy house and the this and the that.
Yeah.
And I think that goes a long way.
Mm.
Can you talk us through, and then we'll get to how you connected with Panda, but can you talk us through how did it feel talking about it when you finally, got that courage and went, I'm going to do this? How did it feel?
It was amazing. Like it was a relief. It was weight lift off my shoulders. And yeah, she was just so supportive and made me realise that there are so many people that are affected by this. Like 1 in 5 mothers, 1 in 10 fathers have mental health challenges in that perinatal period. When I say perinatal, that's the period from pregnancy until the baby turns 1. But by all means, it doesn't stop there. Like I've got an 8-year-old and my perinatal struggles are still alive and well. It was just so good to know that you're not the only one and to have practical strategies. I think for me, it was also looking at what I've done for myself or what I hadn't done for myself. So I had done what so many mothers do and just put themselves last all the time. So, I was on top of everything for the kids, like, obviously all their immunisations, all their, enrolling in childcare or whatever, like just everything for the kids. And I thought that was my job. I thought that I was just to look after them, basically a slave to my children. And I've really learned that is only possible if you can look after yourself. And I hate the term, you can't fill from an empty cup, but it's actually true.
Yeah.
You absolutely cannot. And I think just getting some helpful strategies from my psychologist about how to practice self-care in a better way that was sustainable for me has made a huge difference. Simple things like going around the block, getting some fresh air, getting a walk, like actually feeding yourself, not just eating scraps off the floor when the kids are eating, when you're like stressed that they're not eating all the, the foods they're supposed to be eating and whatever. Basic nutrition, getting fresh air, exercise, social connection, making sure you get out occasionally without the kids and still catch up with your friends. All that stuff has been so helpful. And I think sometimes we just need a bit of a reminder about that and not to feel guilty about it. Like you do need to put yourself first.
It's not you need permission, but sometimes you just need someone to tell you that.
Yes.
Like it feels, saying it out loud in this setting, obvious, but when you're stuck in that world and you're just, everything is fit in between nap times and solids and what we're trying and all of that, you do need someone to give that to you almost.
Yes. Yeah.
But I imagine it's very important, not just for the mothers to get help and get support, but also for the children. Because when we talk about, you talk about not naturally feeling that instant bond with your child, then I imagine that there are a lot of people who, if they haven't made that bond and that connection, are keeping their children alive, are feeding them, are putting them to sleep. But when we're talking about increasing positive interactions, may not want to sit and play or may not want to sing songs or do the like. So I imagine from a child point of view, making sure that we are looking after mums and getting mums the support that they need is really important to that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've found that as my kids have gotten older, that is just so vital because, you need to have something in your tank to be able to give any sort of connection to your kids. And if you're empty, it's really, really difficult. And they pick up on our energy. They 100% feel that. So you owe it to yourself and to your kids to look after yourself, number one.
So I still really struggle with what is normal and what is something that is requiring help and support, because I imagine that parents bond with their children at different points. Even within one family, you might bond with your one child, whilst it's in your belly, another one a few months after they're born. Hopefully. But that does vary. That's quite natural that varies. So when is it a problem? When is, what are the signs that this is not normal? It's beyond that. You said when it's more than a couple of days or when it's more serious. Talk us through that.
I think it's when you really start noticing it and it's impacting your daily life. So I feel like if the bad days outweigh the good, then it's time to do something about it. And it's not to wait, because that's when, you can either go under the radar or things get missed, but no one's going to turn you away. It just could be a simple conversation and that could change your pathway. If you just feel like you've got some people around you who can support you, it can be really game changing. So I feel like there's no threshold as such. And for me, I thought maybe I wasn't bad enough because, of course, with depression at the horrible end of the spectrum, there's thoughts of self-harm or suicide. I hadn't had those, but I had some pretty hairy intrusive thoughts. And I think actually what was the intrusive thought that I had just before I said, okay, I need to go and see a psychologist, I think, was when I was driving through an intersection, had kids in the car, and I was like, wouldn't it be great to just, if a car just hit us right now and we'd have a crash and I'd go to hospital and I'd be able to get to sleep. And obviously I didn't want that car to hit us, but my brain just went to those places more often than not. And I was like, this isn't probably not healthy. And I think if those intrusive thoughts are coming more frequently, then that's probably a sign to do it. And also not be afraid to be honest about those thoughts. Because I remember that was another reason why I didn't speak up, was because I was like, I'm not going to tell them what I'm actually thinking. They'll think I'm nuts. And what if they take my baby from me? And I know that is a common fear that lots of parents have, is that their, child services are going to come and remove the child.
Yep.
Which, more often than not, that's not going to happen. And I think there is more awareness now, thankfully, around intrusive thoughts and the obsessive nature of them.
That's why it's so important that you're doing your podcast, that you're telling the story, that other people can hear that.
And I want to really, I'm sure you have, this isn't the first time you've shared that story, but I want to thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure the first time you said that would have been really hard. But the more you've spoken to people in your role and there's not a chance you've been alone in feeling that way just for a time out, and that's a reflection on the pressure I think parents, I should say, face, is that there is an enormous amount of pressure in this day and age on parents, full stop. How did you connect with Panda and obviously you have a volunteer role with them now.
Yeah, so Panda runs what's called the Community Champions program. So people like myself with lived experience of perinatal anxiety or depression, and I volunteered to become a champion. So I helped out at like the pregnancy baby children's expos that they have around the country, just handing out Panda leaflets and information, and just helping with their surveys that they have, like internal surveys. They will ask questions to us as a population of those with lived experience to get some better research. And then that led to another role where I was sort of in charge of the volunteers for South Australia, just trying to organise any type of community get-togethers and just to spread awareness and break the stigma that still surrounds mental health struggles in that period. And then I also hosted a podcast for them called Survive and Thrive, which again just covers a wide range of perinatal mental health challenges, and that's definitely worth a listen.
You mentioned this stat before, but a lot of people probably don't know or maybe give enough weight to the fact that 1 in 10 dads experience perinatal struggles as well. What have you learned about that in your time with the podcast and with Panda and in your role there?
Yeah, with dads, I would say the signs might be different. So it could be them withdrawing from their family, feeling like they don't really have a role. So feeling a little bit helpless. Perhaps they could be angry or irritable a bit more than usual. And that real avoidance, so kind of just stepping back and, feeling a bit like they don't know what's going on. And a lot of the time, dads won't reach out for help or feel like I don't want the spotlight on me because, how dare I ask for help because my poor wife's struggling herself.
Or the reception maybe as such as well.
And I think, changes to intimacy as well, like all of a sudden they're not number one and, you're not lying in a bed with your partner, you're lying, you might be lying next to your baby and the last thing you want to do is be having someone touch you. So I think there's all those feelings of they might feel rejected. There's just a lot going on for dads. But again, I think the education is quite lacking around that and for them to realise that there's actually resources there for them to get help as well.
I think that's a good time to take a really quick break. We're having a really interesting conversation with Gia Hogarth on all things about perinatal anxiety and depression and some really good points that you've raised there as well. When we come back, we're going to ask Gia about some of her top tips maybe for friends who are just listening and they think they might have heard their new mum friend in some of the stories you've just been telling us now. And we're also going to get a great piece of advice from you too, Gia. So we'll be back shortly.
Your baby's mind is growing even before they arrive. The more you talk and sing and play, the more their mind will thrive. Gotta talk with your baby, play with your baby, read to your baby, make out you're a lion. Talk with your baby, play with your baby, read to your baby. Your words will grow their mind. Every time you interact with your child, you're helping grow their mind. For more information, visit wordsgrowminds.org.au.
So you're listening to the Words Grow Minds Parent Podcast, and today we've got Gia Hogarth in the studio with us. We're talking about perinatal anxiety and depression. Gia is a community champion for Panda, which we've just been talking about. But Gia, in this conversation, there might be people listening who go, you know what? That person really sounds like my friend who's a new mum, or it sounds like, maybe it sounds like me, and they're listening and they're thinking that. Do you want to just give us a couple of quick, I know we touched on it before, flags or just things that if you feel this way, let's take the next step?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So some of the common signs are, constant worry, not just about the baby, but just anything, just stressed, feeling on edge, overwhelmed, really panicky, and that feeling that you can't breathe. So like a tight chest. You might be really irritable, have racing thoughts, or they're known as intrusive thoughts. So thoughts that come in and you really can't get them out of there. You might start avoiding social situations, really withdrawing a little bit. You might feel really tired, but not just from being up all night with the baby, but just that real heavy feeling of fatigue, low mood, feeling a bit hopeless. Rage is a big one, just feeling angry and overwhelmed. Just loss of joy in things that you would usually find joy in. And of course, at the far end of the spectrum is dark thoughts of self-harm or suicide. So they're probably the main ones to look for, but I wouldn't wait till you tick all those boxes. I think if you've even got one of those things that is ongoing and you can't sort of function normally, or what is your new normal as being a mother, then reach out ASAP.
And there is help available to everyone regardless of circumstances. You spoke earlier about psychologists and even with mental health plans. Some people and some listeners might be thinking, well, I can't afford that. I've got a baby to feed. I've got nappies to buy. There's free support and assistance out there. Where do people go?
There absolutely is. So the Panda website would be a great starting place, I think. So Panda has a free helpline around the country, which operates from Monday through to Saturday. If you can't get through, it is a very busy line, but they will always call you back within a day. But even on their website, they just have some fantastic resources. But the helpline is fantastic, and you get either a qualified counsellor or a peer worker. So that is someone who has got lived experience. So they really actually do understand what you're going through. And it's a fantastic free resource. Other places you could go, COPE, the Centre of Perinatal Excellence. I found that a really good one. They have some great free resources online. Of course, your CAFS, your Child Family Health Service, they're a really good place to start also. Hopefully you've been put with a mother's group if you're in those early stages, and that can be great. Even like Playgroup SA, that's another, if you're in South Australia, Playgroup is a great way of connecting with other mums and, getting some free resources there as well. So, you don't have to look too far to find some free help.
That's a great list, and we'll make sure we put those resources in our show notes as well. Gia, this is the question that we ask everyone we have on this show. With all that you've learnt, your journey, what is the one thing you wish other parents knew?
I just want other parents to realise that you are not the only one. No matter what you see online, no matter what your friends say to you, everyone is struggling. No one knows what they're doing. There's no guidebook to parenting. We are actually all winging it. So don't buy into everything's perfect. And I would just also like you to put yourself first. Don't wait to get help. I'll get emotional talking about this, but I just feel like you really need, it's not an option. Like self-care is not an option. You have to put yourself first, or you'll just, you'll get buried really. It's motherhood is tough, but we're all going through it. And I think the more we talk about this and know that it's okay to not be okay, then the better off we'll all be. So don't wait like I did to get help. Just get onto it.
What would you tell Gia 8 years ago?
Probably all of those things. Like just put yourself first, and you do deserve to be looked after as well. You can't always be the provider and the nurturer because your battery will run out. So I think you do need to charge your own batteries, and don't lose sight of your hobbies as well. That's another thing. Like I feel like before I became a mum, I had so much. Sorry, this really wasn't how I was going to end this, but make sure that you don't lose sight of who you are as well, other than being a mother, because you're still a whole person. So make sure you look after yourself as though you would your child.
Mm-hmm. It's a really, really powerful message, and thank you, Gia, for being so vulnerable and sharing that with us, because some of it sounds so basic, but as mums your whole, you listed it off before, your whole thing is everything for that one child, and I think that, or your children, and I think that just shows how much a wonderful mum you are as well.
Thanks, Mills.
And I think it's important that listeners also know that this isn't forever. And I just want to note that Gia has 3 children. She keeps going back.
It feels like forever.
She's got 3 boys and she's still
I'm not going back again.
Just smiling, happy. And, there is a light. I think it's really important to know that. But it is so brave of you to speak up and to share your story, and so important that we've given that advice. And I have absolutely zero doubt that there will be listeners out there who will find help after listening to you. And I just want to thank you for sharing that on Words Grow Minds.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Gia.
Thanks for listening to the Words Grow Minds Parent Podcast. We love hearing from you, so please subscribe, review and comment on the podcast. And for plenty of ideas to support your child's development, Go to wordsgrowminds.org.au and follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Your words will grow their mind.